Alrighty, welcome back on the channel. In today's video, we're gonna do a little bit of an update. So, past video, I was like, hey, ask me some questions, also on Instagram. And there's some cool stuff. What am I up to in the next few weeks? Some personal stuff, relationships, family, how to build a YouTube channel, how do you do what you do. So we're gonna dive in all of that, and I have to say, I already cut this video down to like 20-30 minutes, so that's why I'm also making the big announcement for today in the beginning already. I am starting my podcast. This is also one of the reasons why there were no videos for the past week and a half. 3 episodes are already recorded, ready to publish. And the other big news, I finally got around to start my Patreon. So on the one side, if you've been around here for a week, a month, or maybe even years, and you got some value from what I've been doing here, it will be a way to support me on the one side, but on the other side, I also created different tiers on how to connect with me. And this will be something that I probably only will do for a limited time. It's really a passion project. Once again, I want to work with people one-on-one. I'll be giving out my private number, but all of this information will be at the end of this video. First, let's talk personal. Let's talk what is going on. Let's jump into it. And so, welcome back on the channel here. Today, I want to get a little bit personal. I want to give you a little bit of an update. What is going on in my life? What are the plans for the future? And on the last video, I was like, hey, ask me some questions as well as on Instagram, and there's some really cool stuff. So on the one side, just gonna talk, let's say, the immediate future. Hey, where are you going next? What are your plans? Some personal stuff like what do your parents think about this and that? Who's this girl in your videos? Like, what's the story there? How did you meet? And but even cooler, kind of like questions. Where do you see yourself in 2 years, in 5 years? A little bit of this job interview question, but I'm pumped. I'm just swiping through the questions here. We're gonna go through that. Make sure to stay until the end, where I'm going to reveal to you the project that is coming in 1 week. So with that, let's hop into the first question from Damn Rough. How many languages do you speak and how do you learn German? It's very hard. I speak 3 languages fluently, which is English. As of right now, I use it the most in the past like 5 years. I speak German as well, kann auch Deutsch sprechen. Ich bin in Deutsch aufgewachsen zum größten Teil. Wenn ich ein bisschen von einer Sprache umschalte, ist es ein bisschen komisch. Just said this, for me, it's kind of weird to switch from one language into another. That's when it usually sounds a little bit like rough. Russian I speak as well. По-русскому тоже говорю. Мои родители из Украины. My parents are from Ukraine, so I grew up speaking Russian for the most part. The area that like my family is from, Russian is being spoken most widely. And German I basically learned, I believe also the only way to learn a language, the fastest way and the best way, is to jump into the culture, jump into the language, be forced to have to speak it. So be it an exchange year, be it finding a job in a different country, be it doing maybe a gap year, going to the country, fully immersing yourself. Don't go with a buddy or with a group of friends where you all speak your same language and you just stay in your circle. No, jump in there, and it's not just going to be learning the language, but much more. And I definitely want to learn 1 more language in my lifetime, at least. And so this question, I want to start traveling and make vlogs. What do you advise me? Thanks for answering. Keep inspiring. Thank you, my man. So my biggest advice would be, if you want to travel and create videos, start creating before you start traveling. The biggest thing, a lot of my buddies, a lot of clients that I had that wanted to start a travel YouTube channel, they're like, this day I'm going to start traveling, and then I'm gonna do my first videos. And you don't have the experience, let's say, to record. You don't have really the experience to edit. Maybe you did a few videos, but the biggest thing is to be in the flow of video creation. So what I saw some people doing very well, they were like, going forward, I want to create travel content, but they did a lot of content in their city. They did some personal content. They already did like 20-30 videos within like, I don't know, maybe 3-4 months, half a year. And then when they started to traveling, that was their end game. That was their like, it's actually the beginning, but at the same time, it's kind of like that's when you start to play in the league, so to say. And because you travel so much, now it's tough. You want to travel, you want to have an experience, but you also want to create videos. So my biggest advice is definitely start to already make videos while you're not traveling yet. If you could go back in time, where would you go and why? Wow, that one, it's a super cool question. Like seriously, spontaneously right now, out of I would like to go to the Roman Empire. Recently, I've been like researching for the past 1 year, like a little bit like Marcus Aurelius. Watched the movie Troy. I want to watch this movie. What is the name of it? With Russell Crowe. Another question: are you able to save much money
when you travel? I mean, right now, traveling, let's say, is kind of like my life. That's what I do. That's why I'm kind of like living in different places, what I call it for the most part. And for me, if you have watched some of my videos, especially back in the day, I've been doing some personal finance videos. For me, it's extremely important to put some money aside every month. Let's say financial freedom. And I'm nowhere close to being there to be financially free, but I think the core of it, for me personally, is to live below your means and develop a certain safety cushion that if things don't work out, you have like maybe a year in advance that you can finance until you figure out your next move. Okay, how long have you been together with Bianca? And what does your family think about you temporarily living in Albania? Also that's the other question. There was a bunch of questions like that. How did you and Bianca meet? Blah, blah, blah. I mean, yeah, sure. I'm totally cool to share that. We met in Bali around February. We've been seeing each other for a few weeks. She wanted to travel anyway. And that was kind of like when COVID wasn't a thing really, like early February. So she had flights to Europe and to Serbia. So she has been there for a few weeks. Then like lockdown started to happen. We were like, where can we meet up? We bought flights to Morocco. Those got canceled a week later. And then one of the few countries that have been open at that point, there was like no full lockdown. It was kind of like really just the time, late February, early March, where things started to really pick up. And yeah, we ended up meeting up in Belarus and yeah, kicked it off from there. Have been there 3 months. It's kind of like crazy how it worked out. And yeah, actually a few weeks ago, she started a YouTube channel as well. I really help out her with that and it's going crazy well actually. And with that, I would say that's a good segue to jump into some YouTube related questions that I have here, but also to kind of like to leave this part, like I want to try to keep making my videos. Like personally, that's just my personal choice. I don't want to be, let's say, a couple travels channel or anything like that. She's obviously a big part of my life right now, so I do include her in the videos and she has great energy. But going forward, it's kind of like my videos are on one side about traveling and how I do what I do. On my other channel, it's about my mindset. So let's say like my personal life, I don't want to get too deep into that. And hopefully you can respect that. So a question is, I'm wondering how a life for a traveler works if she has kids, if wanted, settle somewhere or travel with the kids. I think both is possible. I think there's some example where people travel with the kids. Personally, I think at the point where I want to have kids, I want to have a much more stationary lifestyle, maybe in my early 30s. That's kind of like how I see it. But yeah, here's like top 5 books that you have read until now. I actually did a video on that. You can check it out. I will hope not to forget to link it in the description. I think in that video I talked about the 5 AM Club by Robin Sharma, beautifully written. 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It's not really habits, it's kind of like deep core, let's say, attitudes towards life. Like for example, always focus on win-win, that the person that you are with also gets something from it. So don't just think about yourself. Very connected to that is try to seek to understand first before being understood. Like we always are kind of like we feel what we feel. Our world is surrounding around us. So what I kind of like noticed a big change in my life when I started to always ask myself, how does the other person feel? Why do they think what they think? And then you actually try to understand it and people really appreciate that. And The Way of the Superior Man for every ambitious guy, it's like a must read. And you can check out the video. At this point, I read like another 3-4 books since I filmed it a few months ago. Right now I'm reading Influence, really cool book. Andrei Ganov, what's up my brother? Next destination, that's a hard question. With COVID right now, I'm kind of like not planning even too far ahead. I think and I saw that towards September, some of Asia is opening up, places like Bali. Don't know if I'm gonna go there. So no really plans. I'm gonna sit it out here on at least 1 more month in Albania. I like it much more than I thought I would. And then maybe Asia, South America at some point, that's another question. Maybe next year. So what's your opinion about traveling alone? Did you try it? I'm a big guy into traveling alone. I think it's one of the biggest things you can do for kind of like self-reliance, to like start to really feel good and feel secure in your body and just in your ability. What I mean by that is you go out into some crazy places, like me traveling to, I don't know, like tropical countries that are not as developed as maybe Thailand, and just like winging it by myself, being in a city where there is very low tourism. People barely saw a person like you. Everybody's interested. Everybody wants something from you, and you just have to like harden up a little bit. Traveling to India by myself, traveling Just to mention some things that for me were a little bit out of my comfort zone, and then I'm just there and I'm like, actually it's fine. Actually, I'm cool. Actually, I can deal with that. And that's kind of like a big thing that traveling alone teaches you. It gives you the freedom to know that even if things don't work out the way you want them to, you can figure it out by yourself. So a certain self-reliance, also when it comes to meeting new people, creating new circles. It's kind of like one of my big goals, create a little bit of a friend circle all over the world. And that gives you a lot of freedom. So if you have like relationships that you're not really happy with, you don't have to stick with them. So traveling alone, especially people who do a little bit of, let's say, backpacking in hostels, it's so easy to meet people. It's almost like on autopilot. That's kind of like the first step. Stefan S is asking, probably German guy, what's up, bro? How did you get into being a digital nomad? What's the best way to get started? So I would say the best way to get started is to, first of all, have a good amount of savings. So if you're working a job, that's what I did when I was like 14, 15, I started to do side jobs before I was even like doing like little side hustles, newspapers, had my own little aquarium business. But basically, I started to work kind of like part-time while I was still in school, half of the day in school, the other half of the day working. So my grades weren't the best, still very, very decent. Then doing jobs. I worked in retail, clothing stores, watch stores, call centers. And then after school, I was actually working full-time. So I was like working 40, 50 hours a week and living at home, spent maybe 100, maybe 200 euro a month, making a few thousand. So within a year, you can put aside a good amount. And with that, then you have, again, a certain cushion. And at the same time, try to figure out a certain side hustle. I mean, digital nomad means you're making your money online in one way or the other, or maybe you're working remotely. So I know some people that are, let's say, they have a job stationary. I know a guy in the US, from Germany. People basically started to do their job remotely. And for me, I was kind of like started a channel, kind of had a few 100 subscribers. And then I was like, hey, I'm going to give myself 1 year to figure it out. And within that year, I did like 200 videos, went to like 50,000 subscribers. And the growth was like 500 subs, 1,000, 1,300, 2,000, 10,000, 50,000. So it kind of like took me like 10 months to get to 10,000, then another 3 months to 50. And yeah, we'll see how we're going to be growing here. We're going to talk about that in the end. What's your most memorable experience to travel so far in the Philippines? It was the boat ride with Kiluma, 3 days on a secluded island. I did it twice. The second time I was there completely by myself on an island in the middle of the ocean. Hell of an experience. Do your books impact your travel choices? And if so, in each way, in what way? Well, I would say a little bit in a different way. I would say my travels impact my book choices. So depending on the people that I meet, what they are up to, like recently I talked to some people that do like some, let's say, marketing. They recommended me a book in marketing. Influence is what I'm reading right now. And the book is talking about like how different marketing strategies almost like make you buy things without you knowing it. And it's crazy to realize like, why do we buy the things that we do? And just statistics on that. So that's kind of like what happens. When I was in India, I just walked by a little like stand with books. I don't know if they're like pirated or whatever, but like they're about The Alchemist, and it really felt kind of like cool to read it. So basically my travels influence my book choice, I would say. The other way around maybe, but I don't see it like that. Question, do you intend to go to South America? If yes, which countries? Right now, I maybe would have been in Brazil. That was the plan for early or mid 2020. We know what is happening, maybe next year. How to be a more communicative person, what communicative skill to learn. A little bit of a question for the second channel, kind of like communication skill, mindset in terms of that. Like I would ask myself personally, and I did that back in it, like I'm still right now a lot, why do I want to be more communicative? Like why do I want to, let's say, meet more people or have better communication skills? What type of a life do I want to live? Like, do I want to be the extroverted type of guy who has big friend circle, who is like at large gatherings and is doing very well there? This is what back in the day I thought I want to be, but now I know that I'm a little bit more of a private guy. I'm a little bit more introverted. I prefer smaller groups. I prefer one-on-one. And so after asking that, I would, very practical, my advice personally is to go out and desensitize yourself a little bit when it comes to talking to people. Maybe if you go into a clothing store, ask for a little bit their opinion on what is like right now they want to sell, what they think is cool. Even if you're at a grocery store, look the people in the eyes, chat a little bit. Those kind of like the safe moments where you can get into the momentum of being more communicative. Definitely consume a little bit of mindset content when it comes around that, but then go out and speak to people, try to use this knowledge right away, and just get into this groove of being social. Like for example, when I was, let's say, traveling a lot, I was in Bali, a lot in hostels, I felt like so socially like smooth. I could just like meet people like that, just walk into the cafes, hey, what's up, how you doing? And some, like right now, I'm working a lot more on the desktop, so if I would walk into a cafe right now, I would struggle with it a little bit more, which is absolutely natural, absolutely normal. So my advice would be, which communicative skill to learn? I would say empathy when approaching people, communicating directly what you want to do. Like that's a big issue, I would say, when you want to meet people. They're like, what do you want? So what do you do apart from YouTube? I mean, YouTube is kind of like the platform. I have 2 channels that are run actively myself and some other people that I help. So this is what I do apart from it. Last year, I've been doing it in person when I was living in Hamburg for some time. There was a few companies that I was like going in, helping them to film their videos. Actually, the guys that I've been working with, Ahead Nutrition, they then actually went to kind of like the Shark Tank equivalent. They wanted to film a video. That's what I was doing with them. And they were like pitching the startup. We started a YouTube channel, a little bit, things like that. Also more personal people who want to start their YouTube channels. This is what I do on also video calls. I will be talking a little bit more about that in the future. Yeah, this is what I do apart from it. How to think big from DN Herrera. I would say, why to think big? Why do you want to think big? Reverse engineer a little bit. No, I think I'm going to cut out this question. I don't know how to answer it, to be honest. How to think big. Wow, how to think big. I would say dive deep into yourself and ask yourself what it is that you want in life and why it is. Because in the beginning, when I started out, I wanted to live the super cool lifestyle, but the more a little bit you start to achieve, the more things start to seem like a little bit meaningless, just like look cool, travel, and then it's a little bit more about family, community, giving back. And I think those are the stronger driving forces. Like ask what your motivation and purpose is, and that will force you to think big in a more natural and authentic way, if that makes any sense. Hey Dany, my man, what is your 2-year plan and what is your 5-year plan? Do you still see yourself traveling often and making videos? How old are you? Sorry, I didn't pay attention to your age. Don't worry, Steve, oh damn. That's his name here. So, 2-year plan. In 2 years, I think for me, it's gonna be slowly time to get a base. As of right now, I'm traveling completely location independent, and I'm not traveling, I'm living. Let's say perpetual traveling is what I heard like a few years ago, and I thought like that's a cool idea. I've been kind of like on and off traveling for the past 5 years, and the last year just like for the most part 2-3 months in one place, especially right now with COVID. I've been in Belarus all throughout this time traveling, and I really liked it. You just like sit down in one base. And in 5 years, I think in 5 years, I want to be at a point where I'm working with a team. I'm thinking about doing content on the one side in multiple languages in different niches, and have, let's say, a media company, an infrastructure where I can not only share, let's say, nice visuals. I think like my 2, let's say, overarching things that I'm doing is travel content and personal development content. So in these areas, I want to create a little bit of a system, of a structure, invite some people in, and operate in multiple languages. So kind of have like also like sub brands that I'm doing. And this is also kind of like the big plan that I had for 2020. But let's be honest, for all of us, it has been a little bit of a shake-up, a little bit of a reconsidering. What do we want to do, how and when?
Going forward, I want to also, let's say, host events, potentially maybe in Bali or in the Philippines. Like imagine this one video that I shared from the Philippines where I'm on a boat, we're going on secluded islands. At some point, I want to take out a group of like 10 ambitious, motivated, amazing people who want to build a great life together with me, and do a little bit of a boot camp, kind of like on the one side as a travel agency, give this travel experience of like where companies already charge hundreds and sometimes, in my opinion, way too much for what they actually provide. Like a lot of like people who travel for the first time from like the West, from Germany, from the US, they pay like thousands to a company that just basically buys them a plane ticket and gives them like an insurance and a SIM card when they arrive in the country and then put them on a tour. What I actually want to do is I want to do a deep immersion on the one side in travel. Every day, go out, maybe to waterfalls if we're on the secluded islands. Like this is maybe something with 2021, 2022, hopefully. But then also like do 3 blocks. On the one side, the block of health. We're going to talk about that. On the other side, the block of relationship, talk about it. And then also personal branding, creating videos. So do maybe like a 1 week or 2 week in-depth workshop. This is kind of like a little bit of a dream, but even more of a goal, a plan of mine for the next year or 2.
Here we go. That's the next question. Tizzle921, 2020 rightfully gets associated with a lot of negativity. What do you think was the best part about 2020 so far? I mean, on one side, for me, it brought me to places where I didn't thought I would be. I ended up staying more stationary than I thought I would be. I thought I would be traveling all the time. I ended up just to be in countries I never thought I would go to, Belarus and right now Albania for like the past 6 weeks. It forced me and all of us to kind of like slow down. It was a hard time, but as the cliche Instagram quote goes, only from like times where things are a little bit rougher, a little bit tougher, that's where people need to get creative, innovative, find new ways, reconsider their life. It's painful. And also for me, don't want to complain at all. Like for me, I saw it as a blessing. March, April, I'm just sitting there. So what's my next move? What am I gonna do? And that was a big question. So that kind of like to answer is what I think is the positive. People had some time to reflect on their lives. And the last question, a little bit longer, got it from Instagram, from my good buddy Elvis. You have been watching for a while, really appreciate you. So in today's environment, it's hard to predict what will happen in 5 years, he is saying. So I would ask you these 3 questions. What are your values? What are your goals? What are you willing to do to make them happen? And I like the last one the most. So in terms of values, if it's like connected to my goals in life, I would say my values is like, let's say, autonomy, a certain self-determination, to not be at the whims at outside circumstances, like let's say being out of money or people telling you what you have to do and just how you have to do it. So I have a lot of things going on in my life and therefore having a certain freedom. But at the same time, I would say for me it's very important to a sense of community, a sense of purpose. That's just when it comes to my career, not personal values like in relationships. That's a different, I would say, topic. My goals, I would say in the next few years, as I mentioned before, build a little bit of an infrastructure of a team. And the way I would sum it up, to help build people freedom in terms of health, finance, and relationships. And that's what I love the most is like, what are you willing to do to make it happen? And I would say those are the things is like, you have to reverse engineer in a way like, hey, this is where I want to be in like 2 years. So how much, let's say for one side, content do I need to put out on the one side? How fast do I need to grow? So how does my day-to-day life needs to look? What time do I need to wake up? How much work do I need to achieve in a certain day? How many people do I need to reach out to build the circle of people where you can connect, where you can have a cool community? And those are, let's say, the small questions that day-to-day for me, it's like, hey, right now I cannot take a week off from doing anything because that just doesn't match up with my bigger goals. So it's kind of like you have to do what it takes. I hope you enjoyed today's little Q&A. We are at 32 minutes. And if you made it all the way up until here, first of all, I super appreciate you. And also now let's share the big project that I've been working on that I'm super excited to share. I am starting the Got a World to See podcast. I want to have in-depth conversations. On the one side, I want to do a monthly episode where I share all the new things that I learned, things that helped me, maybe things that I struggle with when it comes to being on this journey of like, let's say, living perpetually in different countries. This is when I also sometimes meet people along my travels and I just have such amazing conversations where I almost feel like guilty that I'm not sharing this with the world in the most productive way. And that's what I want to do. This is just a little stepping stone of me tipping my toes into the cold water of podcasting. The first episode is going to be me sharing my story until now, going very much into details, how I started out doing, let's say, the first videos, the countries that I traveled to, some travel stories, maybe some childhood stories. So that's what I love to hear about people, like the typical self-development podcast, while I love many of them, but what I kind of like lack sometimes is the personal stories, the childhood stories over this just like like be like, you know, be disciplined, be consistent, be creative, morning routine. I want to make it like a lot more personal. Also, when I'm gonna have people on, I would really love to like hear their story in a way of like, how was the relationship with their parents? What do you think was the tipping point that decided you to go where you wanted to go? And that's gonna be my first episode that I'm gonna be sharing. So that is gonna be the podcast. The first episode will be launching on the 20th of August. From there, it's gonna be 1 to 2 episodes a week. And if you have any suggestions for guests, people that I could reach out to, let me know their name, send me a DM. Really excited also to have some people over on the podcast. That's probably one of the biggest things. And the second big announcement for today, I now officially started a Patreon account. So maybe you're familiar about it from some other YouTubers. It's basically a platform where you can support different creators and what they do. But I was thinking like, hey, what can I give in return? And what are my goals actually? Like, let's say building a community really of a certain inner circle. As I mentioned before, maybe doing events in the future. And the way that I was thinking is, I'm gonna do a very low tier, around like $4. That's just basically for people that are part of the inner core of the audience, that have to maybe around here for a while. Like, I'm speaking about people like you who just stay until the end of the videos, and I like, it's already more than I can ask, you know, and I totally appreciate you just watching here, and it's more than enough. And if you are not in a position to directly support me, I'm not asking you to do so. So don't feel any pressure to do that. But if you have got some value over, let's say, the last few months and years from what I was doing, that's a great way for me to be a little bit more creatively independent. So I don't have to rely to create like at least like 2, 3, 4 videos to keep my ad revenue high. I wanna offer something, let's say, in return. So for a little bit of a higher tier than the $4, we'll do it 10 or 20, we'll see. The link to my Patreon will be in the description. There you can get the details. I'll film another video for that. I will offer a little bit behind the scenes of how I do what I do. So I want to do a video of how I edit my videos in depth. I want to do a video, for example, on if I reach out to hotels. Often hotels host me. This is also how I keep my costs a little bit low while having a really good lifestyle. And you don't even need to have a big channel. You can just offer them, let's say, to film a video, exactly how I do that, the words that I use. So I'm going to just also like share, let's say, an email. And then there will be also a little bit of a higher tier where on the one side it's for people who just want to support my work, be part of the bigger project, be a sponsor of the Got a World to See mission. But also I want to build something that we want to call an inner circle. Selected, limited group of like-minded individuals where in the next few months and years, I want to create connections. I want to build my inner tribe of people that are motivated to build a greater life. And there I'm going to be offering to get in touch with me one-on-one, in person, weekly check-ins for a monthly support of my work. So basically I will give you my private number, and every week I will be checking in with all of the guys that are in there. We're going to do voicemails, and we're gonna do it at first individual, so one-on-one, the most affordable way for me to help you out in person every week, hold you accountable. Because one of the biggest problems that I had when starting out is like, you feel alone, you feel like you don't know what to do, you don't feel support, you just feel lost. And that's what I really needed. And also when I was working with people together, it helped me out. I noticed the most effective way is to have somebody who has your back, and I want to be that someone for you potentially. So definitely check out my Patreon. As I said, it starts at $4. Okay, and to wrap up today's video, a little bit of a cut. I'm coming for you from another day. Messed up a little bit with the recording. The ending wasn't in there anymore. But yeah, I had a really good time answering your questions. A little bit of a deeper Q&A. I really liked it. But I am super pumped for the upcoming podcast project. The first episode is going to be a personal one, very personal actually. After that, a few days later, I will publish the first interview with former world champion in natural bodybuilding, Komang Arnawa. I filmed this video back in the time when I was actually in Bali. It's an over 1 hour interview where Komang shares his past, his childhood, how he was struggling, how his parents couldn't afford to buy him actually food for him to compete, and how he were able to overcome all of that, how he got to where he is right now. Really cool story. So that is coming up in the first interview podcast episode. I will keep you updated as always on my Instagram, and definitely consider to join my community on Patreon, either just as a supporter or as part of the inner circle where we're gonna build, let's say, a community over the next few months and years. I'm very excited. You just watching here right now means more than you know. And with that, until next time, you too got a world to see. kind of like have to make a minimum amount of videos to keep my address. Oh man, like talking for an hour to myself here, that's just great. Oh man.